Αγαπητοί τηλεθεατές, καλησπέρα σας. Άλλη μια Παρασκευή, συνεπής στο ραντεβού μας, θα σας παρουσιάσουμε και σήμερα τις πιο σημαντικές εκδηλώσεις που διαδραματίζονται στην Ομογένεια. Η ομάδα παραγωγής και αυτή τη φορά σας υπόσχεται την έγκυρη εβδομαδιαία ενημέρωσή σας. Πριν ξεκινήσουμε το πρόγραμμά μας, θα θέλαμε να σας υπενθυμίσουμε ότι οι τηλεθεατές μας από το Ηνωμένο Βασίλειο μπορούν να παρακολουθούν το πρόγραμμά μας αλλά και τις υπόλοιπες παραγωγές του Hellenic TV από το Rockbox, του οποίου η παραλαβή γίνεται από τα γραφεία της CITA UK στο Southgate. Με αυτόν τον τρόπο όλοι εσείς μπορείτε να βλέπετε το Hellenic TV 1 και ολόκληρη την πλατφόρμα του Hellenic TV, που περιλαμβάνει 14 ελληνικά κανάλια από Ελλάδα και Κύπρο, νέες κινηματογραφικές παραγωγές, καθώς και να αποφεληθείτε από τις υπόλοιπες υπηρεσίες που προσφέρει η CITA UK. Περισσότερες πληροφορίες σχετικά με τα προγράμματα του Hellenic TV μπορείτε να βρείτε στην ιστοσελίδα μας www.hellenictv.net, ενώ για τον τρόπο με τον οποίο μπορείτε να παρακολουθείτε ολόκληρη την πλατφόρμα του Hellenic TV στις τηλεοράσεις σας, στην ιστοσελίδα www.citauk.com. Για την προβολή των εκδηλώσεών σας και της επιχείρησής σας, επικοινωνήστε μαζί μας στο τηλέφωνο 020 8292 7037 ή στην ηλεκτρονική μας διεύθυνση info@hellenictv.net. Στην απόψινή μας εκπομπή θα σας παρουσιάσουμε την ενημέρωση από τον κυβερνητικό εκπρόσωπο της Κύπρου, κ. Νίκο Χριστοδουλίδη, σε συγκέντρωση βρετανών βουλευτών και συμπατριωτών στο βρετανικό κοινοβούλιο, το αφιέρωμα στο ελληνικό σχολείο της κοινότητας του Αποστόλου Βαρνάβα και τέλος τον εορτασμό των εθνικών εορτών 25 Μαρτίου και 1 Απριλίου από μαθητές του Ελληνικού Γυμνασίου Λυκείου Λονδίνου. Το πρώτο μας θέμα παρουσιάζει την ενημέρωση από τον κυβερνητικό εκπρόσωπο της Κύπρου, κ. Νίκο Χριστοδουλίδη, σε συγκέντρωση βρετανών βουλευτών με πολλούς συμπατριώτες στο Βρετανικό Κοινοβούλιο. Τη συγκέντρωση διοργάνωσε η Εθνική Κυπριακή Ομοσπονδία και ο πρόεδρός της, κ. Πίτερ Δρουσιώτης. Την εκδήλωση τίμησαν με την παρουσία τους πολλοί βρετανοί βουλευτές, φίλοι της Κύπρου, όπως οι Gareth Tomas, Barrows, Sheridan, Alan Meale και πολλοί άλλοι, καθώς και παράγοντες της παροικίας μας, εκπρόσωποι των παροικιακών κομμάτων, εκπρόσωποι των οργανώσεων και πολλοί συμπατριώτες μας. Σαφή, ξεκάθαρα και πολύ δυνατά ήταν τα μηνύματα που έστειλε ο κυβερνητικός εκπρόσωπος της Κύπρου, κ. Νίκος Χριστοδουλίδης, σε συγκέντρωση Βρετανών βουλευτών αναφορικά με την παραβίαση των κυριαρχικών δικαιωμάτων της Κυπριακής Δημοκρατίας στην αποκλειστική οικονομική ζώνη από την Τουρκία. Μέσα στη Βρετανική Βουλή, ο κ. Χριστοδουλίδης τόνισε ότι η βοήθεια και η αλληλεγγύη μεταξύ των εταίρων της Ευρωπαϊκής Ένωσης πρέπει να είναι αμφίδρομη. Την εκδήλωση άνοιξε ο πρόεδρος της Εθνικής Κυπριακής Ομοσπονδίας, κ. Πίτερ Δρουσιώτης, ο οποίος, αφού καλωσόρισε τους παρευρισκόμενους, προσφώνησε τον κυβερνητικό εκπρόσωπο, κ. Νίκο Χριστοδουλίδη, και έκανε μια μικρή αναφορά στο Κυπριακό. Ας δούμε τη σύντομη ομιλία του.
It's 7 o'clock, so I'm going to start. Your Excellency, Deputy High Commissioner, and other representatives of the High Commission, honourable members of Parliament, friends, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I'd like to thank our parliamentary sponsors of this event for enabling us to use these excellent facilities at the House of Commons. I'm delighted to welcome our main speaker tonight, my very good friend, the Cyprus government spokesman, and a popular figure in the British Cypriot community from his days as Consul General at the Cyprus High Commission in London, Nikos Christodulidis. Nikos was appointed government spokesman by President Anastasiadis about a year ago, so he's eminently well placed to provide important insights into the latest developments on the island. I would also like to extend a very warm welcome to our parliamentary friends who are here with us tonight, Sir Alan Meale, who needs no introduction, and of course David Barrows as well, who's very well known to all of you. We will be joined by others later, but there are votes taking place, particularly in the House of Lords, so there will be other parliamentarians joining us in the course of the evening. I have counted that this is the 14th meeting that I've had the privilege to chair at the British Parliament since my election to this position. And I'm sorry to say that little of substance has changed in relation to the island's division on the ground in Cyprus in the last 8 years that I have performed this role. Turkey remains defiant, an occupying force, unwilling to take the steps which will bring unity to Cyprus as well as stability to the island and the wider region. Not only does Turkey show no signs of changing its stance, it seems intent on undermining efforts to achieve a settlement, as has been vividly illustrated by its incursions into the island's exclusive economic zone in the last few months. The Cyprus problem is not an intercommunal dispute. It is essentially a problem of invasion and occupation by a powerful state against a small, vulnerable island. Cyprus has neither the military means. We have just been joined by Lord Ray Collins. Ray Collins, can you join us, please? It is essentially a problem of invasion and occupation by a powerful state against the vulnerable island. Cyprus has neither the military means nor the resources to stand up to Turkey's aggression. The contrast between the reaction of the West to what is happening in the Ukraine today and what has been happening in Cyprus in the last nearly 41 years, including Turkey's invasion of the island's waters in the last few months, is striking even by the double standards which permeate the international community's actions and behavior. The only protective shield that Cyprus has is international law and the alliances it is able to form in its national interest. The island has no choice, therefore, but to follow a multifaceted foreign policy and to use its geostrategic location to maximize its leverage. No one should therefore be surprised by the development of the historic ties between Cyprus and Russia, for example, but this has to be viewed in the context of similar bilateral arrangements with the United States, Germany, France, and China, as well as Cyprus's obligations, which it honors as a member of the European Union. The United Kingdom, uniquely, of course, has sovereign military bases as well as a variety of military privileges on the island, and the two countries are fully engaged with each other on a wide range of security and military issues. There is no doubt that the United Kingdom remains a crucial player with historic treaty obligations to Cyprus, as well as responsibilities arising from its position as the island's partner in the EU, in the Commonwealth, and in the United Nations, and of course by virtue of its strategic alliance with Turkey. As such, we believe that the influence of British parliamentarians in the House of Commons and in the House of Lords, especially in the run-up to a general election, is of vital importance to the Cypriot diaspora's mission to help deliver justice for Cyprus. I would like to conclude by expressing, on behalf of the Federation and our community, our profound thanks and appreciation to all of our friends in Parliament. And we have two outstanding friends in the House of Commons who are here with us tonight, Sir Alan Meale and David Barrows, both of whom have been staunch supporters of our cause for many, many years. I'm delighted that my good friend Ray Collins, former General Secretary of the Labour Party and now in the House of Lords, has also joined us. And he is somebody who understands the issue, and I hope that he will be a friendly voice in the House of Lords in the years ahead.
Στη συνέχεια, ο κύριος Δρουσιώτης έδωσε τον λόγο στον κυβερνητικό εκπρόσωπο της Κύπρου, κύριο Νίκο Χριστοδουλίδη, ο οποίος έκανε μια συνοπτική περιγραφή του ιστορικού του νέου γύρου συνομιλιών για το Κυπριακό και επέκρινε δειρμύτατα την Τουρκία για τις ενέργειές της στην Κυπριακή ΑΟΣ. Ο κύριος Χριστοδουλίδης αναφέρθηκε στην επίσκεψη του Προέδρου Αναστασιάδη στη Ρωσία και στα θετικά αποτελέσματα από την επίσκεψή του. Αναφέρθηκε επίσης στην οικονομική κατάσταση της χώρας και, όπως είπε, η Κύπρος κατάφερε να μετατρέψει την οικονομική κρίση σε ευκαιρία για μεταρρυθμίσεις και αναδιάρθρωση. Στο βίντεο που ακολουθεί θα δούμε αποσπάσματα από την ομιλία του κύριου Χριστοδουλίδη.
Honorable members of the Parliament, ladies and gentlemen, it is a distinct honor and pleasure to be at the House of Commons today, addressing such a distinguished audience. I truly look forward to a fruitful discussion and exchange of views. Before proceeding to my presentation, allow me to express my sincere thanks to the honourable members of the Parliament and to the President of the National Federation of Cypriots in the UK, Mr. Pieter Drusιώτης, for their invitation. My presence here today is certainly timely. We are at a critical juncture in the Cyprus problem. Turkey, a candidate country for accession to the European Union, has escalated its illegal and highly provocative actions in our exclusive economic zone, as a result of which President Anastasiadis was left with no other option but to suspend the Greek Cypriot side's participation in the negotiations. Turkey's gunboat diplomacy in the Eastern Mediterranean is certainly not unrelated to the important geopolitical developments we are witnessing in our immediate neighborhood and the political and energy transformation that is unfolding in the Eastern Mediterranean. Cyprus, an EU member state, uniquely situated at the crossroads of Europe, Asia, and Africa, at the southeasternmost corner of the European Union, is at the front line of these developments. My presentation will concentrate on the following interconnected developments: the Cyprus problem, developments in the exclusive economic zone of the Republic of Cyprus and how it relates to Cyprus' regional role, and the economic recovery of Cyprus since the Eurogroup's decision of March 2013. I will tackle the issues in this order and will therefore embark on my presentation with the Cyprus problem. Negotiations for the Cyprus problem started following agreement reached between the two leaders on the joint declaration of February 11, 2014. The agreement was the result of extremely difficult and long negotiations. Our side insisted on the need to have this framework of fundamental principles for the negotiations and for the comprehensive settlement agreed at the outset, given that Turkey and the leader of the Turkish Cypriot community had repeatedly and publicly challenged the UN-agreed basis for negotiations. Moreover, it was important to ensure that the new round of negotiations will be meaningful, structured, and results-oriented, with all chapters of the Cyprus problem discussed in an interdependent manner. The agreement of the joint declaration certainly created a momentum. Shortly after, in March, negotiations started both at the level of negotiators and at the level of the leaders. The first phase of the negotiation was the so-called screening phase, during which each side presented orally its position on all chapters of the Cyprus problem. The first phase was completed by mid-April, and the second, more substantive phase of the negotiations began in early May, and consisted of each side submitting written proposals on all chapters as provided for, in fact, by the joint declaration. By the end of July, the second phase was concluded, at which point efforts focused on the methodology to be followed during the third phase of the negotiating process, with the aim of moving the process forward and bringing the two sides closer together. It is worth noting that perhaps for the first time, the two sides exchanged written proposals for all chapters. At this moment, at the end of August, the UN Secretary General appointed a new special advisor on the Cyprus problem, Mr. Espen Barth Eide. We welcomed the appointment of an experienced EU-oriented politician and expressed readiness to work closely, constructively, and in good faith with him in order to achieve tangible progress. Mr. Eide was immediately active upon appointment. Following a joint meeting of the leaders of the two communities with the special advisor on September 17, 2014, we were able to overcome the obstacles encountered as regards the methodology that would govern the third phase of the negotiating process. In this respect, it was agreed that the third phase of the structured negotiation would aim to bridge the gaps through negotiation on all chapters in an interdependent and results-oriented manner as provided for in the joint declaration. An agreement was also reached to start the next phase of the progress on October 9, with the first package of chapters to include the chapter of governance and elements of the chapters of property and territory. Developments created real hopes and expectations that prospects for progress were created. As such, our side prepared intensively not only for the meeting of October 9, but overall for the new negotiating phase. Ladies and gentlemen, only 6 days prior to the start of the new round of the negotiations, at a moment when important momentum was created, Turkey, a candidate country for accession to the European Union, contradicted all expectations by its partners, by the United Nations and the European Union, and acted contrary to the obligations assumed as part of its accession negotiations. On October 3, Turkey issued a navigational telex, a NAVTEX, through which it unlawfully designated and reserved a large area within the southern part of the exclusive economic zone of Cyprus for seismic surveys in search for hydrocarbon reserves. On October 20, and despite efforts undertaken by us and by some of Turkey's partners, Ankara escalated its provocation by implementing the NAVTEX. The Turkish research vessel Barrows, followed by 2 support vessels as well as a warship of the Turkish Navy, illegally entered the area's reserve, where they remain until the end of the year. I would like to emphasize that Turkey did not limit itself to areas that it considered as contested with the Republic of Cyprus. With the pretext of protecting Turkish Cypriot rights, Turkey carried out seismic research in the southern part of the exclusive economic zone of the Republic, which includes blocks allocated to European and international companies for exploration and exploitation of our natural resources.
Εδώ να σας αναφέρουμε ότι ολόκληρη την ομιλία του κύριου Χριστοδουλίδη και ολόκληρη την εκδήλωση θα την παρακολουθήσετε προσεχώς στην εκπομπή με το φακό του Hellenic TV. Στη συνέχεια τον λόγο έλαβαν οι Βρετανοί βουλευτές φίλοι της Κύπρου. Πρώτος μίλησε ο συντηρητικός βουλευτής του Βόρειου Λονδίνου, κ. David Barrows, ο οποίος μεταξύ άλλων είπε πως το Κυπριακό δεν πρέπει να απασχολεί μόνο ως θέμα των Κυπρίων, αλλά και ως ζήτημα απονομής, δικαιοσύνης και σεβασμού των ανθρωπίνων δικαιωμάτων. Ας δούμε την ομιλία του.
Thank you very much for bringing together, Nikos. It's excellent to see you again, and thank you very much for your wide-ranging speech, which touches on issues affecting Cyprus and the world as well. And I think it's important, and we're all friends of Cyprus here, and we're cross-party concerned. You know, we would be agitating. I know that colleagues here were agitating under the previous government as well for the government and ministers to step up, and that's something we all want to do, and increasingly so. But I think the point that you mentioned, and when we're dealing with the challenges facing Cyprus and beyond, is this is an issue that shouldn't go away. It shouldn't just be a Cyprus issue. It shouldn't be a Cyprus problem. This should be an issue of human concern for us all who are concerned about human rights and justice. And what I'm agitating for, as much from my government and as we move to a new parliament where hopefully my government are still there, is very much seeing that it should be a priority that affects us all. You mentioned, and it can't go without some irony, the visit of President Anastasiades, and I fully respect the need to ensure that there's contact and there's good relationships with all Security Council members. But the irony that I pointed out in a recent question, one of the last opportunities to ask the Foreign Secretary, was the fact that the focus of questions was on what is happening in relation to Ukraine. Was the reality that all the focus and attention on what's happening in Ukraine for a country that's been occupied and facing division in 1 year, and the reality is that Cyprus is facing that not just for 1 year, same in a European country, but for over 40 years now. And that's the reality and the harsh reality that we will need to address. It's what needs to see as a priority from the Foreign Office and from ministers. And that's what we're urging to happen, is that priority. I think the tendency is, and it's something that's lapsed in some ways, is where is Britain's responsibility in this whole process? And we all urge Britain to take its responsibility seriously as a guarantor power. We saw, as it happens, Britain taking its natural responsibility when, in terms of the economic crisis, and you referred to how the great efforts that have taken place to ensure that Cyprus is on that road of recovery. And I was speaking just before the meeting to the Permanent Secretary of the Treasury, Mr. Macpherson, who reminded me that the top man came to Cyprus to help support. He returned there again recently to show not just the words, and we've all been here for a while in meetings over years. You want action, and not just words from us politicians. And it was welcome that the government did actually show their friendship by sending a top official to help provide technical support.
Actually, the Foreign Secretary Hague was the first foreign minister that called to President Stasiadis next day after the Eurogroup in order to...
Yes.
Yes. And we are grateful for that.
Yes, and what the point I'm trying to say is that level of support from Britain needs to continue in relation to help to support the solution, a comprehensive and just solution. And we need to get to that point, that level of support, because what we do have presently is a reality where we talk about Cypriots solving the solution, quite rightly so. We don't want a suggestion of outside powers coming in and imposing their will. We then have the next down the line European Union, as they have a crucial role to play in helping support a solution. And then we almost have, towards the end of the backstop, we have Britain. And I think that's not right. I think Britain needs to be ready to be much more proactive in seeking a solution. We have a heavy burden and responsibility, and new members of Parliament coming as well, to ensure that it is an absolute priority in the new Parliament. I'm committed to that, and my colleagues are, to make sure that we see that Cyprus is a European issue that needs proper respect and attention, but also a wider issue of humanity. Just the other point to mention is, just a couple of weeks ago we had a meeting with the Famagusta Association, hosted it. Interesting, it was a bi-communal meeting where there was a call for the return of Famagusta to its lawful inhabitants. And that's been raised. I've just had a question back today from the European Minister saying that he himself says, these are words of the European Minister who apologises himself for not being, he said, "I understand the strength of feeling about Varosha, the present state of which reflects the consequences of continued division of Cyprus, and we fully support all relevant Security Council resolutions," and they've raised the issue with the Turkish Cypriots and with the Turkish authorities, but remain convinced that a comprehensive settlement is the best chance of resolving this complex issue. We have ready and tabled down, ready to ensure there's a substantive motion of this House to reflect the European Parliament's declaration in 2013, that we can come together as a new Parliament and have it down there as the first item on the agenda of what is a backbench committee, to make sure that we have a substantive motion. That is down there, ready to be tabled. We've applied for a debate to be the last one of this session in Parliament. To see Famagusta as a way of trying to really unlock what is the great potential for Cyprus to be a united island for the benefit of Cypriots, for the benefit of Europe, and for the benefit of us all. And perhaps, because it'd be interesting to hear your comments back on particularly how we can move as such an obvious confidence-building measure, the issue of Russia. Thank you.
Στη συνέχεια το λόγο πήρε ο διοργανικός βουλευτής Sheridan, ο οποίος στην ομιλία του επέκτηνε την Ευρωπαϊκή Ένωση για 2 μέτρα και 2 σταθμά, που φαίνεται να υιοθετεί τις αντιδράσεις της αναφορικά με τις ρωσικές ενέργειες στην Ουκρανία και σε σχέση με τις τουρκικές ενέργειες στην Κύπρο. Ας δούμε τη σύντομη ομιλία του κύριου Sheridan.
And whether I am returned or whether I'm not returned, I will and always will remain a friend of Cyprus, and particularly because I have made such many valuable and real good friends since I became involved in Cyprus, so that won't change. But David has already alluded to the question of Ukraine and Russia. And for my sins, I've 2 reports I'm responsible for as a member of the Council of Europe. The first one was the missing persons in Cyprus, which we carried out almost a year ago. It's certainly our intention to revisit that report to see what progress, if any, has been made, because I take the view that It's really not. It's really important that when we produce a report, that we evaluate the process and the value of that report, and rather than leaving it lying in some shelf in Strasbourg, that we go back and see what progress, if any, has been made. And if there hasn't been any progress made, then we need to find out why, and then perhaps take a different tact. For my sins, I am now also responsible for the missing persons in Ukraine, and I'll be visiting there next month, after the election in May. I've already been to Ukraine and seen some of the travesties that's going on there, and it is pretty depressing to see what's happening. But like David, we pose the question, if it's wrong for allegedly Russia invading Ukraine and all the sanctions and all the international sanctions against Russia for allegedly invading Ukraine, why is there not the same sanctions? Why is there not the same international despair about the invasion of Cyprus by Turkey? So there has to be some sort of consistency from whichever government is in power at Westminster. So it's a case of, I think we just need to keep making the case for a united Cyprus. I really don't understand why Turkey is so determined to retain where they are. I'd have thought they had more pressing issues in Turkey, in particular in the border between Turkey and Cyprus and Syria, to deal with and let Cyprus grow and develop. And in terms of growth and development, I'm absolutely delighted to hear that Cyprus has turned the corner in terms of economics, and it looks as if we're on the road to recovery. But I hope that recovery doesn't happen too quickly, because I'm going on holiday in Cyprus in May, and I'm just hopeful that the prices are still a bit reasonable. But after that, you can make all the growth that you want. But seriously, I mean, it goes without saying, this is a non-partisan issue. That all parties agree that Cyprus is on the side of the angels. They do deserve a better deal than what they're getting, and I can well understand people's frustration at the length of time that it has taken. And regardless of which government is in power, we will continue to press. And that's the important thing. And as I've said in many occasions, Cyprus hosts the British defence systems on their island, and I genuinely do think, as a result of that, then Britain, we as politicians, should put a wee bit more pressure on Turkey, and indeed America, because America uses that base in Cyprus as well, to get some sort of reciprocal agreement that if Cyprus is kind enough and good enough to give us that facility on their lovely island, then we should be doing a wee bit more to help them when it comes to negotiations. And it really is frustrating in Turkey in terms of negotiations. It's obvious that they're not taking the negotiations seriously. We need to find a way to make sure that we can do all we can, whether it be in the UK government, whether it be in the Council of Europe, whether it be in the European Parliament, to make sure that we force Turkey to do the right thing and end this occupation, this illegal occupation on a member state. And I will never tire of saying that to those people who support Turkey and indeed the invasion of the island since 1974. So, as I said at the beginning, regardless of who comes back to this place, I would obviously like to come back because it's quite good money. So it's important that we do all we can when we come back, whoever it is that's coming back, that we continue to fight for Cyprus. I know I will certainly not give up, regardless whether I'm elected or whether I'm not elected, in terms of supporting and fighting for the cause in Cyprus, because it is a just cause. You've had tremendous tolerance, tremendous frustration at just exactly what has not been happening, and I applaud you for that. But please believe us when we say we will continue to do all we can to make sure that Cyprus is returned as a free and independent country within Europe, a peaceful country at ease with itself, and the foreign invaders go home as quickly as possible. Thanks.
Τον λόγο πήραν και άλλοι ομιλητές, όπως ο Sir Alan Meale, και στη συνέχεια ακολούθησαν ερωτήσεις από το κοινό. Ολόκληρη αυτή την ενδιαφέρουσα συζήτηση στη Βουλή των Κοινοτήτων θα την παρακολουθήσετε προσεχώς στην εκπομπή με το φακό του Hellenic TV.